All right, today we're going to tackle a really big one, a theological concept that people have been exploring for literally centuries, the Godhead. Now, it can feel like a bit of a brain twister. One being, three persons? How does that work? But don't worry, we're going to break it down piece by piece using our source material to build a really clear picture from the ground up.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get the basics down. What even is the Godhead? Then we'll dive into that central paradox of three in one. After that, we'll explore God's attributes, this kind of mind-bending idea of how an infinite being can actually be known. And finally, we'll see how it all points toward the purpose of worship.
Okay, so before we get into the weeds, what's the one single idea we have to get right? Well, according to this teaching, the entire concept of the Godhead is built on one simple foundational truth. And this is it. One. That's the absolute, non-negotiable starting point for everything we're talking about today. There is only one God. Every other idea we explore is built on top of this single, solid foundation.
So if the foundation is one God, you're probably asking, where does all the complexity come from? Well, this is where we get into the real heart of the concept, the central paradox of how that one somehow also involves three. The source gives us this definition, a unity of three coeternal persons. Let's just unpack that for a second. Unity tells us it's one single being. Three persons means there are three distinct identities inside that one being. And that word coeternal, that's the real kicker. It means they've all existed together forever, from the very beginning. It's not like a family tree, with a parent and then a child. It's more like the 3 points of a triangle that have to exist at the same time to even make the shape. And who are these three persons? The source is very specific here. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And it makes a really important point. These aren't three separate gods. No way. They are three distinct persons who together are the one God.
Okay, so we've got the structure down, one God in three persons. But what is this God actually like? Let's take a look at some of the core attributes that the source material lays out for us.
This list really paints a picture of a being that is, well, limitless. Let's touch on these. Immortal, meaning can't die, exists completely outside of our concept of time. All-powerful, has literally no limits on power. All-knowing, knows everything, past, present, and future. Above all, the ultimate authority. And ever-present, which means being everywhere in the universe at the exact same time. Now, these aren't just descriptions, they actually set up our next big question.
And this leads us to a really fascinating paradox. I mean, if God is infinite and all-powerful and all-knowing, how can we, as just regular, finite human beings, possibly begin to understand or have any kind of relationship with a being like that?
First off, the source is really upfront about our limitations. It says that because God is infinite, God is fundamentally beyond our ability to fully comprehend. It's kind of like trying to hold the entire ocean in a teacup. Our minds are the teacup, God's nature is the ocean. We can get a taste, for sure, but we can never, ever contain the whole thing. But here's the other side of that paradox. Even though we can't fully grasp God, this teaching says God isn't a total mystery either. Instead, God can be known through something called self-revelation. What that basically means is it's not on us to try and figure God out. It's about God choosing to reveal parts of himself to us. So let's pull all these threads together. We've got this picture of an infinite, all-powerful God who, at the same time, chooses to be known. The source material then poses a really logical question. If all that is true, what is the most natural response to a being like that? And this quote kind of brings it all home. It connects that immense, infinite power to one core central attribute, love. So the teaching concludes that it's this unique blend of supreme power and perfect love that makes God worthy of worship, adoration, and service from absolutely everything in creation. It's presented as the ultimate logical conclusion to understanding who God is. So that wraps up our explanation, but it really opens up a much bigger question for you to think about. This idea of a unity of three is pretty unique, right? So how does that structure really challenge or differ from other ideas about a single God that you see in different religions and philosophies throughout history? Thinking about that really helps put this whole concept into a much wider context. Thanks for joining me.